Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is our first live stream on LinkedIn, and we're super excited to be doing this, and even more excited to have Al Shalloway join me today. And welcome, Al. And
Thanks for having me.
just to talk about value stream management and the new Discipline Agile value stream consultant role. And with that, Al, one of the things that I'd like to kind of start off with is, I saw one of your recent LinkedIn posts, and this body of work is the culmination of the last 16 years of your career, plus your company and everybody that worked with, plus everybody that now is working with you in PMI. And two of the things you articulated was making work explicit and providing a set of insights. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the starting point for me, the reason I peg it as 16 years was even though I started using Scrum and XP in 99 and 2000, it was around 2005 that we ran into what I would call troubles with Agile at scale. And back in 2005, that was 3 teams. Scrum of Scrums didn't really work. It has changed. Actually, it's changed to what we called the product coordination team in a book Guy Beaver and I and Jim Trott wrote over a decade ago. But what we had known at the time was lean and theory of constraints. We added flow since then. And basically what it was I knew success was not limited to a few really smart consultants. I mean, we had an amazing crew at Net Objectives, and some of the people there that this work is based on, is just remarkable and was groundbreaking. What I did, I had a couple of my own ideas thrown in, but mostly what I did is integrate, these people along with the giants like Goldratt and Reinertsen and Kent Beck and people like that. So it was that integration of things. And for me, it was, what does it take for a consultant to make a difference, or an internal, but some change agent, okay, whatever you want to call it. But what does it take to make a difference? What do they have to do? What do they have to see? What do they have to look at? Because personally, I think most of what we look at scale is just wrong. Go back to the Agile Manifesto. Management's not mentioned. It's all about software development and the team. We need more than that. Yeah. So that was my question. What does a consultant, internal, external, whatever, have to do? And then how do you arm them with what to look for? Not so much tools. Tools are great, but right. But what are the insights? What do they need to look at? And especially because we're in complex systems. I've never been a fan of saying complexity limits us. Yes, it has constraints, and there are things you can't do because of it. But, we're consistent with things like Dr. Goldratt's, the creator of Theory of Constraints, his book, The Choice. Now, everybody knows about the goal with brilliant, but the choice is worth looking at it, and it's a different way to look at things. So the difference in what we've done over the last 16 years, or I guess what I've done mostly over the last 16 years with a lot of help and now helping at the PMI, is looking at 3 things. What do you need to know how to do? And how do you have a system given to you within which to look to see how to solve an organization's problems? And then how do you integrate those actions you have to do with those things you have to look at and create a workshop? And that's basically what the Discipline Agile Value Stream Consultant Workshop is. It's a integration of what people need to do with how they look at it to make decisions. And I'm actually pretty excited about it. Where we were 6 months ago, what's happened, I've worked on this for 16 years, but what's happened in the last 6 months has been remarkable. And I have to attribute that to people like yourself, Joshua, and others, having gone through an alpha and then the beta pilot and getting feedback from people in the field. So this wasn't just built by me and Net Objectives people, or even the PMI Disciplined Agile folks, but by a lot of really, really sharp consultants using the Disciplined Agile methodology and thought process. And so it's a pretty cool workshop. It's got some really neat things in it. Now, you asked me 2 questions. I'm not sure if I answered both of them or only one of them. So ask what I missed, if I did.
No, I think you did. And, one of the things that you already kind of touched on is this, right? What people want, yet nothing works everywhere. How we can provide a workshop that very experienced people can come into and get a good understanding of how they use what's in it as a basis to make some decisions along with, the leadership of an organization from, top to bottom, to make that applicable for that given unique context.
Yeah. Well, see, this is a dilemma the whole industry is in. On the one hand, people want a solution. They want to know this is going to work. They want to see that other people are using it. They want that familiarity, and that's natural. That's just the way people are, and fighting that is like not a good idea, basically. On the other hand, and I hate to say it this way, but I don't know how else to say it this way. It's kind of a fool's errand at the same time, because there is no one size fits all. So you have to face this dilemma we're in. People want something that works for them, and yet not one size fits all. And for a long time, this was something, how do you resolve it? Because you can't build something from custom. It's just too hard to do that. So what DAVSC does is it has recognized the similarity of knowledge work. And I say knowledge work, not IT work, not software development, knowledge work. And now, so it's not designed for everything. It's designed for when you have to basically solve problems, innovate, things of that nature. There are a lot of consistencies, like manage queues, don't have too much work in the background, have small items of high value, avoid handoffs and handbacks. There's a lot of consistency across all this. So you can't go generic and abstract, because that confuses people. But by finding the pattern, so to speak, the consistencies, the similarities, as well as noticing the differences, what we put together is a way to basically create a playbook, that says, here's how you create a backlog of improvement items. And it takes a little bit of learning. That's why it's a 3-day workshop. And even that's not enough. I mean, to teach everything would take probably 5 days, and that wouldn't be everything. That would be the minimal amount.
Right.
But what we do is we supplement the workshop with what we call a community of practice for DAVSC graduates. And what this is we give you the rest of the information now that you've got this foundation. I mean, you get brain fog. I mean, after a day or two, 3 days is
especially this content. I mean, this is some. Yes, this is not easy to go through an 8-hour day, let alone.
No. And although we have workshops and exercise, that's actually the cool thing. We use Miro boards, virtual boards. So we literally take you through the steps. We start out with here's what's needed and how you started engagement with a client. Then we give you the background of the knowledge you need and the ways to look at things. And then at the very end, although we've had exercises throughout, at the very end, we actually show you how to go through a playbook. And this is the process you actually do with clients. And then, of course, there are holes, because there will always be holes. Because what did I say? People are different. Corporations are different. So we give you choices, the discipline, agile, choose your way of working, and the browser tool and things. So after you've got the foundation, after you know how to navigate all this, then more of the detail comes in. Now, you don't actually even need the detail to have the course make a big difference. So I want to be clear. I'm not saying you take this workshop and then you don't know much. No, you take this workshop and you actually are given one way of solving the problem of Agile at scale. So in that sense, it's complete. But I did say that not all practices work everywhere. So obviously somewhere else, this is just an example, how to do it somewhere else is not complete. So we give you that afterwards, because trying to give it to you all too much is too much. And I want to say one thing. This is why it took me 16 years. I mean, I'm not a slow guy. I've got a master's from MIT. I've got a master's in mathematics from Emory University. I've got a huge number of self-study programs, a BA rather in psychology. I'm not a slow guy, but this is a very difficult problem.
Right.
And it's difficult because how do you make it so this customization can be done by, it's got to be a skilled consultant. We're not saying you come in and you don't know anything and 4 days later you're able to be a master. No, it's not that at all. So you have to be a DASSM senior scrum master, because that teaches you the disciplined agile way of working already. So we're building off that, the mindset of it, not the particular, so to speak. But it really doesn't take that much to get a start. It just takes having figured it out, which has taken me a long time. I mean, this is about the 4th or 5th generation of this, so to speak. And it took trying and working, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, and learning. And that's a key thing.
Yeah. So one of the other things, right, I'll pull up, VSC is the chief transition agent. And, the course obviously centers around that. But one of the things that I've started to get a lot of questions about, just as we've been sort of talking about the DAVSC course, is it applicable for others to take it? Like if you're a program manager or you're a portfolio manager, what's the value in it if I'm not going to be, quote, like a consultant, or again, this chief transition agent, because we'd expect we'd be bringing in somebody to help us with that.
Yeah, no, that's good. The roles I would say this is directly applicable to are like a program manager should definitely understand this, because they need to look at the whole picture of things. I think if you were a CIO and you wanted to understand how things were going, or a CTO, I think it would definitely be applicable to understand what's going on. We are working with things we call microaccreditation and some other follow-on workshops that'll be available later in the year that is meant to be more supplemental. So you don't have to take even a 3-day workshop to get the gist of it for your role. Right. There are materials we're building that we're going to be disseminating through the community, the community of practice, that should help the consultant help educate the other. So I view that a lot of what we're going to see is there's internal education, or the DAVSC does the micro education, so to speak, that these other roles need. And that'll be with some supplemental material. It also can be done with the exercises we're creating. I got to tell you, I've done some virtual stuff for years and years, not as much as you actually, because I know you're really experienced in it. But now, having been truly embedded in it, it's almost like every couple of weeks I come up with, oh my God, look, we can do this. And it's like,
it's like, oh my gosh, this is going to be great.
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. I'm going to write about this because I'm real excited about it. And actually, you haven't even seen what came out of this. You've seen part of it, but you haven't seen the other part. So we needed a little, how can I say, it was a little dry on day 2 in the DAVSC. Joshua was leading the pilot, and he was awesome. But, it was, I won't say it was death by PowerPoint, but it was meme by PowerPoint. It was a little dry. Day 1 and day 3, there was a lot of content. Day 1 and 3, we had some nice big exercises, and it was really fun. But day 2 was a bit dry. So we said, well, we got to come up with an exercise. And it turns out the first one we wanted to move just didn't work. So I came up with something, and it was really cool. It was like what we now call a dynamic impediment backlog. And what it is you say, it's a little board that says, here's the challenges we're having. Here's how we could fix it, but here's why we don't, because a lot of times people don't. Right. It's like an impediment might be we have carryover of our stories from one sprint. We could fix it if we did maybe acceptance test-driven development, or we could fix it if we had smaller stories. And the reason we don't is, well, can't get buy-in, don't have budget for ATDD, or whatever it is. And you just put it out there. And then I came up with that. This is pretty cool. And then we did, in a community practice session, we ran this. And the result of running it was using the same board 3 other ways. Gee, what if you had 5 teams doing this simultaneously on the same board? You would just see what other people were doing, what other challenges they had, what other solutions they had. And if you saw, they can't do it because of this, and well, I can get around that. Cross-learning. It shouldn't just be teams learning, but you could have teams now learning themselves what their impediments are while they're cross-learning. A very efficient use of time. Yeah. And then somebody said, well, wait a moment. Actually, I think it was me, but it was, wait a moment. Why don't we not figure out what our teams are? Problems. Why don't we see what the problems across the teams are? Yeah. So this is now a workshop we'll be adding to the Discipline Agile, a Senior Scrum Master course, I think, but it's something available on the COPs. And then somebody said, well, what if you have lots of these people? Well, how do you do that at scale of like 50 teams? Okay, well, you can't have 50 times 8 people in this. Well, you could, but it'd be too much. Yeah. So the idea of getting Scrum Masters together and team leads and doing it that way. So this way of creating collaboration in either a dynamic, we're all in it together, or we are doing it asynchronously. You put the board up, you leave it up, people can come and go as they go with it. It's like by looking at what's really needed, by coming from a background of lean and flow and theory of constraints and systems thinking and all that, and by having the tools like this, it just is a growing thing. So DAVSC isn't like, here's a workshop, we've got it done. It's here's the spark of a community we're building.
Right.
And things like what I just described have been falling out, for the last 7-8 months while we've been building this thing. And it's pretty exciting to me because there is no right answer, but there are a lot of essential pieces. And how you integrate that in a manageable way is critical. And I think we've done that with the DAVSC. I feel this is way better than the stuff we were doing at Net Objectives, and we were really successful at scale.
Yeah, and the community's been great. I mean, the alpha program that you ran, and then now that we're getting into what is become this community of practice, and seeing how taking something and somebody has an idea to kind of repurpose it to get value with that same asset, but in a different way, is fantastic.
Yeah.
And the other thing I also want to mention is the deep dives, right?
Oh,
so as things have come up where somebody maybe wants a little bit more information, like as a byproduct of the first pilot, right? Then there were all these deep dives where it's a page. And then if you want to describe a little bit on how it's like a little bit of information, and then you get a little bit more. And then if you really want to dive in, it's there as well.
Yeah, I'm laughing because so Joshua was teaching the workshop, the pilot, and I was like, I had to not say anything. People really thought I couldn't do that. And I understand that.
I didn't think you were going to be able to not do it.
Yeah, nobody really thought I was going to be quiet, but I needed to be quiet because we needed to demonstrate that somebody else could teach this. And although Joshua was awesome and I think well above average, it's still like, well, can somebody teach it? And we've got a bunch of people who are quite qualified and can teach it. Yeah. And Joshua handled a lot of the issues extremely well. In fact, I would say only a few were like, okay, Josh, I might have gone a little deeper, might have gone this direction, but I was like a 95, 98%. Whoa, A+ rating for Joshua here. But I realized that these deeper dives are interesting because by deeper dive, there's an issue, but there's a question either to get clarity or there's a question to add more depth to it. That's why it's called deeper dive. And there's actually no way you can cover all of these, but for some people in the workshop, they've got questions and they need them answered. So what I started doing, because I couldn't talk, is I started writing these things called deeper dives. And these are like a sentence, a paragraph, something like that, short things that just clarified stuff. And I would put them in a document and then I would show them the document. So that was fair because that would be available the next time. And what we have now is this is an integral part of the workshop is we already had a participant's guide, but now these deeper dives are in there. And if you've got a question, you can look at it while you're listening to Joshua. And of course it helps Joshua too, because he knows they're there and they're all organized by the lesson. So you see right where to look. And this deeper dive is the other idea of there can be this huge body of knowledge, this huge information set that you use when you need it. This idea that, oh, we can only present so much because we got to be simple. I don't buy. It's like simple. I've got to just say it. I hated the simple to understand, difficult to master. Okay, I used to ride a unicycle. In fact, I still can, but I'm getting a little older. I haven't in a while. But simple to understand, difficult to master. Man, a unicycle is like, wow, that's exactly what it is. 27-speed bike. Now, you might say that's not simple, but I would suggest from an ease of use point of view, it's very simple. And this would be the DAVSC metaphor. DAVSC, let's see, Disciplined Agile Bike Consultant, a DAVSC bike consultant would take a 27-speed bike, would remove the front brake control, because that can be dangerous. You want to use the rear brake. All single brake bikes are using the rear brake because that's safe, that's stable. So you remove the front brake. You set the gearing, which has two gears, one at the front for 3 different gears, one in the back for 9 different gears, 27 combinations. Set it to the middle gearing up front, middle gearing in the back. It's decent for flat. Now you have a 1-speed bike. You have a 1-brake bike, easy to use. You don't need to understand the derailleurs. And when you need more, you show them how to use the front gearing or the back gearing, whichever one actually the back gearing probably be better to do next. Show them the back gear, then show them the front gear. Then talk to them about the brakes, give them the front brake, and give them the risks of it and the value of it. See, that is simple to use, easy to learn. Mm-hmm. And well, that's my view of it. And that's what the DAVSC in a nutshell is. It's like, okay, you want to set a default? By the way, you can do this with DA Scrum. You can do this with DA Senior Scrum. The fact that we give you choices, we also give you a way to just have defaults. If you just want to one speed, 7 speed button. It's not complicated. It's solid design, and it's a solid way of explaining it to people. And that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
So it isn't easy to have built this thing, but it's not hard to use. I think it's a lot easier to use than, say, Scrum or Scrum at Scale because, that's Safe or Scrum at Scale, because it's fit for purpose and lets you get in and then look at things. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm passionate. I better be focused on it for
I love describing it like that, right? It's fit for purpose, and you can always make it fit for purpose because you can always make other selections as you're learning.
That's right. So the DAVSC is this accelerated person. It's like a person who could get a suit fit for you. It's not very complicated. You go into you can go into a super expensive store where they pick the cloth and they cut it for you. You don't need that.
Right.
Go into it where it almost fits, but now tailor it. And that doesn't take a lot of time, but it does take some skill. But not everybody needs to do that. That's why I'm saying I wouldn't recommend this workshop for everybody. This idea of everybody's got to take 2 to 3, 4 days of training, it's silly. They don't need that much information. They need the context within which to work. Now, are we out of time, or can I say one more thing about that?
No, we've still got a couple minutes, so by all means, yeah.
So I want to say something about that. There is this presumption in the Agile space that you always start with the team and then you grow it up. And I won't say I never believed that, but by around 2005, 2006, when I started doing systems thinking and applying it to larger scale, I said, this is silly. This is ineffective. What you always want to start with is the whole, the system. Systems are about the relationships between the pieces. It's not about the pieces and how you tie them together. It's about the whole and how those pieces in the whole interact with each other. And I remember my first implementation of SAFe, by the way, and there's a case study for it. It's Northwestern Mutual, I can say, because it's in the public domain. I remember going there, and this is around 2012, something like that. And I remember I had a budget, as we all do. I had both time and money. And I was like, man, I got a lot of people there. I think we had, 125 people on our train or something. And then we had another 125 people we were interacting with, shared services, business intelligence, about half of that group. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, man, there is no way. I'm not good enough. And in those days, the materials for Scrum that they had weren't good. They've really made major advancements in the Scrum XP for SAFe. It's really quite good. But back then, it wasn't so good. And I was saying, man, there's no way I'm going to get these guys trained. And I thought about it. I said, well, I don't need to. I don't need to explain all this stuff. These guys are going into a system. Now, what we did, by the way, wasn't quite SAFe. I changed it a bit. So this is not an endorsement of SAFe. But back in 2012, it was the best formalized system we had. Mm-hmm. And I had made some changes. But the key was that I said, we are going to put a system. They're going to understand that they're in iterations. They're going to understand they're working together. They're understanding why they have to do 2-week sprints. They understand how they interact. They understand why they have to plan together. And we put the whole thing in, and then they came in under that. And we started kind of at the holistic side of things. And that's important, because if teams understand why they're coming into a bigger context, they need to know less. They just know this is the context. I'll get to choose my way of working, and I'll get to see how I work. But you have to explain less because you're giving them the context within which they need to work. So sometimes the best way to do a transformation to Agile is actually maybe teams growing up, because that's where you are. Maybe it's at the IT level, because that's where you are. Maybe it's at the top saying this is what we're doing, and then you figure out how to do it holistically. But this idea, it's always from the bottom up, is just, there's no evidence for it. It's just a bias from the Agile Manifesto 20 years ago. And that's what's really looked at, and that's what's needed. And we're the only ones who do that. We can start top, middle, bottom. And by top, I don't mean it's pushing down, but I mean it's they're giving you the blessing, and then how do you, from the top, create the bottom up, meet in the middle type of thing. And I don't know anybody else who does that. I know Les might, actually. Les has some cool stuff in it. But most everybody, they say you can do it, but look at it. See what people do. That'd be my one bit of advice, by the way. Look at what people are doing, not what the promoters say you can do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so we are really close on time, and yeah, for everyone in attendance or anybody that's watching this on a replay, I'd say if you're interested in checking out the DAVSC course, lots of good information out there. We're running a number of those, and during the sort of extended sort of pilot period that we're considering April is in, we're actually giving a really significant discount so that we get more feedback in the community, we get more people into the community of practice, which just helps evolve the content, more of assets that we're getting ready to share, all of that type of stuff. And Al, you and your team has done just, again, a fantastic job with this, as well as everybody that participated all along the way, and all the people in the alpha, all the sharing that happened that has really made it what it is.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and I felt the community of Discipline Agile consultants, plus we had a lot of outsiders. We had about an equal mix of the two, so we could see how to bring people who don't know DA into this thing. It was really an adventure together. And I think what actually is the most satisfying about it, for years, I've, of course, helped others and inside Net Objectives. And now in the last year of the PMI, I've done some projects. But this was, in a sense, really, in a lot of ways, like the first real intense that do it all agile, figure it out, see what limits us. And that's where we came up with some new things. There's some really cool individual team things we came up with as well, because we were drinking our own champagne as we went, and we got feedback and we listened. And that was actually in one way kind of the most exciting part, because it was like, wow, look at managing queues. What does that really translate to? And came up with new techniques about that, or here's how to collaborate when people are across the world, because we had people in every time zone just about.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see that this stuff works. And that when you have problems, it's like what Henry Ford said, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. If you have an attitude that you're blocked because of whatever it is, you are blocked. And if you have the attitude that you can always learn, and you could always move forward, then you will always learn and move forward. And on the Agile community, we tend to impose things on us that we shouldn't be doing. We shouldn't be saying, oh, we can't figure this out. We can't have 100% predictability, but who can figure that? Who does? Know if nothing is like that.
Right.
Right. So anyway, yeah. So this is good. So this has been fun. I'm glad hopefully people got some value out of this. And, besides the workshops, which I think are beautiful, do join also the Discipline Agile LinkedIn group and ask questions for me there or anybody else there.
Yeah. So, Al, thanks for coming and chatting today. Fantastic. And again, everybody in attendance, I see lots of the comments, everybody saying hello. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I think using this platform on LinkedIn is going to work out really well in the future to help the community. So thanks again to everyone. And
thanks for all the comments. I see all the highs. I haven't figured out, first time on this platform, I can't figure out how to say a chat. So hi to all you people who said hi on the comments. Thanks for the attention. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And on the setup in LinkedIn, if you have any follow-on questions or any topics, anything else you'd like to have covered in the coming weeks, please just put them in there, and I'll get those going. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Thanks.